Let's come to order. Today is April the 12th. We're at the our monthly regular meeting of the City Council. We're at the Civic Center. Please call the roll.
Ms. Blackburn?
Here.
Ms. Albright?
Here.
Mayor Bailey?
Here.
Ms. Castro?
Here.
Mr. Chesney?
Here. I'm a little out of order.
You had to think about that one.
Yeah. Please rise for the invocation and remain standing for the pledge of allegiance. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and every blessing of life, and we thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. We pray that you would bless us, keep us, and guide us. First in your name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. It's been a pretty interesting last 2 weeks. Have talked to a lot of interesting visitors and people. Had a man call me one day and said, I know y'all are pumping the city sewer in the canal because it's brown and it stinks. And I said, no sir, we're not doing that. Had another fellow said, you know, I'm going to call the governor if y'all don't clear up this Gulf water. It's not clear. I said, well, I don't know if the governor will help, but I'll talk to Jesus about it. Had another guy said, you know, there's water running out of the 8th Street Canal. I said, yes, sir. It rained. There's a lot of water coming out. And I found a lot of those comments were interesting. I found another one interesting. Adrian was telling me somebody called City Hall and kind of insinuated that I was going around cutting empty lots in town and sending the city a bill. Boy, I hope you pay me for all that. Not exactly true. Matter of fact, I don't think I've ever been paid by the city for any work I've ever done for the city at all. But that's not true. In case some of you don't know, I actually own a landscape business, and that's what I do to put the essentials of life, like food and shelter, at my house, because y'all don't pay me enough. That's all I had to say. Council comments, please.
Just to let you know, I'm having another coffee with council with me Thursday, April the 21st, right here, 5:30 to 7:30. Coffee and cake provided. For anybody who doesn't know, I do that every couple months. It's just your opportunity to have my ear, pick my brain. I get to pick yours in a casual atmosphere. It's just me. So there's no, it's a public meeting, so all are welcome. So there's little flyers in the back if you want to pick one up to remind yourself. Thank you.
CDC update. This Saturday, April 16th, they are having an annual renewal of your wedding vows, which will be on the beach, and there will be a small reception following that. If interested, there is still plenty of room for you to join in. If you haven't already signed up, please contact CDC.
I'm good.
Okay. Citizens' comments.
Is this when I ask? I'm sorry.
Yeah, please come up and tell us who you are and where you live.
My name is Gail Dwyer, and I live on South 39th Street, and I wrote a letter to you, and I appreciate the responses I received. It's about the Canal Parkway, and I missed the last meeting. I apologize. But my question is really, if this is a safety issue, I think there are just some of us who walk regularly over on that beach who just don't understand why it's a safety issue, especially when the equipment is non-operational. That beach is just so beautiful, and I know all of our beaches in Mexico Beach are beautiful, and we appreciate all of them, but there's something about that beach with the dunes on the right. We just love it over there, and there are some regular walkers who just really feel like it's not unsafe for us to walk down that street to use that beach. So I'm not sure if any of you have been over there, like this weekend when the gate was wide open and the equipment was sitting in the canal. If someone could just explain to me, maybe I'm missing something. Do you think the crane is going to fall on my head? Or I just feel like it's more dangerous for me to drive on 98 behind a logging truck than it was this weekend to walk down that street. So I would just ask if you would reconsider maybe allowing access over there when the equipment is not operational, if that might be a consideration. That's my only request. Thanks. That all I do is now I sit down, I've never done this before, I appreciate
Anybody-
the opportunity to talk.
Anybody want to respond?
Well, I think that Preble Wish was going to bring back an answer for Ms. Albrecht concerning how long and what the plan is. So maybe when we have to hear from Preble Wish, we'll have more information, we can discuss it further.
I'll add to, sir, if I could.
Okay.
This weekend, I got a phone call from an officer on duty, which was Saturday. Someone had went down and removed all the signs, all the barrels, put them behind the lift station, out of sight, out of mind, opened the gates, and there was more than 100 people and vehicles on Canal Parkway. That was an intentional act by someone to open that roadway up. There is a safety concern. No, the crane's not going to fall. It could fall on someone, but the debris, the construction area, just like the one-way sign, do not enter down here, was just violated while I was standing outside beside my car in the parking lot. The signs are there for a reason, and no matter what we put up, people are still going to go over there, and it's my recommendation that they stay closed. Thank you.
Okay. Any other citizens' comments, please? Okay, let's move to the consent agenda, please. The council has had a chance to look at all the meeting minutes that we have from the month of March. Are there any corrections or amendments? Motion to adopt the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Blackburn?
Yes.
Ms. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Ms. Castro?
Yes.
Mr. Tindler?
Yes.
Okay. First on our agenda is Preble Rish. Jeff?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeff Britton. I'm with Preble Rish. I'm an engineer. I'm going to go through the list of active projects that we have. I'm not going to read it word for word. I think everybody can read that. The alternate water source, there hasn't been a whole lot of progress made since the last meeting. I need to get with Mel over the next few weeks to get this going again. I think we've identified a good parcel, but we just need direction on who's going to make the contact, how do we move forward beyond this step now that we have a parcel identified.
Jeff, on that particular issue, I've been contacted by the City Council of Port St. Joe.
Okay.
They would like us to pursue a joint agreement with them for them to be our alternate water source instead of us digging our own well.
Okay.
We have a line that actually connects us to the Port St. Joe water source at Beacon Hill, which on the surface makes a lot of sense.
Right. I've heard that mentioned as an option. I think the concern with that is that if Mexico Beach gets hit with a good event that knocks out our water, or Bay County does, there's a good chance that St. Joe is going to get hit as well. So I think that's the thought process so far that I've heard behind that, why we continue to explore an additional site so the city can provide their own,
Okay.
have their own source. So, any questions on that one? Okay. On to the canal site. We'll get to access in a minute. Let me hit these other two items first, the channel markers and then the electrical work that is going to need to be done out there. Channel markers, I spoke with Dr. Sidman, who is with the Sea Grant folks, who are the ones who've actually funded our $30,000 grant for resiliency and improvements to help the coastline respond better during large storm events, reduce after disaster cost in repairs. He said that since the application stressed the use of steel piles, that they would be more resilient than the timber, that we need to move forward with the steel piles to support the channel markers. He did say that if the city still balks at it and has a legitimate's not the right word, but has a compelling reason why they should be allowed to use timber instead of steel, since they've been using timber and they keep popping out of the ground, he'll listen to it, but it's his position that we need to move forward with the steel. And the cost for the 4 steel channel markers with the Coast Guard required lights, solar-powered lights on top. The total is $77,390. Now, there's a $30,000 grant that can be put towards that, so that would mean out-of-pocket $47,390 that could come from the grant funds that are currently being used on the canal improvements.
Who did you say you were talking to that was saying the steel is better?
Dr. Sidman?
Who is
Well,
that?
our structural guys, when we put the application together, way back when, at the beginning of the grant application process, knowing the history with the timber piles, felt that the steel was a better, more resilient, more appropriate material in this instance than the timber piles.
And who is Dr. Simmons?
Sidman. He's a professor at UF, and he's involved with the Sea Grant program that reviews the applications and awards some of the funding.
Is it correct that if we don't follow our grant application and use steel, that we would lose that grant?
Unless we wanted to use it on fish cleaning stations, but last I've heard about that, that's not something that we really want to pursue right now. But from my conversation with him, yes, if we move forward with the timber without getting their approval first for changing the materials, then their funds would not go towards those piles, the timber piles.
I've gotten quite a few comments from experienced boaters about the steel.
Okay.
They, same thought I had when you and I talked 3 weeks ago, that the timbers might be a little more forgiving, but we have had a lot of problem with them popping out this and that, and I prefer to think it was improper installation is why they weren't down deep enough. Not sure. I've personally never hit any kind of pole, thank the Lord. But some of the experienced captains has been in and out lately. They've said they've seen quite a few people bounce off the poles. Don't do a good job of navigating. Just wondering if steel might not be a good idea.
Okay.
We have a very narrow channel. Permanence is a good thing. Grant funds are a good thing. But I'm kind of wondering, I'm still on that same fence I left you on.
Okay. We can certainly look into a timber pile and see if a deeper embedment depth would be the way to go, and if that would satisfy the folks at Sea Grant that would allow us to use those funds.
I mean, I think a 35-foot pole, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, you can probably buy one for about $200. If you get one that's this big, you can probably get it for $400 or $500. That's just a couple of $1,000s versus mega funds, and it probably costs $5,000 to put them in. But it's still a lot less than.
I think the last quote that I saw for the timber, and this is just a ballpark figure because it doesn't have all the details, I don't think it has the embedment depth that we were looking at, but I think that was still in the 30,000s once you add the lights and the access equipment and everything and the installation. Going deeper, that cost is only going to go up.
We don't have to have lights.
Yeah, we do.
For the Coast Guard, we do. The outer ones, I think, have to have lights.
They never have before. That's must be something new.
And we have, but they haven't been very good ones.
They never are. The seagull poops can cover off all your solar and your bulbs within a week.
I think that kind of gets back to our conversation at the workshop the other night about maintenance.
Well, the other thing on this whole project is the cost. If we got a grant for 30, it's for pilings and fish cleaning station. You want to use 77 for pilings. Leaves us 47 in the hole with $0 for fish cleaning. If we pay for putting wooden pilings in, and there's no way it's going to cost $30,000. I mean, $500 a pole is $2,000. The lights can't be that much, or nobody'd have lights. You said $30,000. That's just, I just can't believe that. So I would think 10 to 20, 10 to put those in. We get probably locals to put the dang on stuff in. But if we only go, so we only put 10,000 into the wooden pilings, we've saved $37,000, and we still have $30,000 for the fish cleaning station. I think we ought to ask the guy that we would prefer having wooden pilings because our small channel and inexperienced boaters run into them all the time. And this metal damages the boats way more than a wooden piling. You don't have to plead with him on the cost factor, but the cost factor is what the city's worried about. I'm worried about.
Understood.
We could save enough money by putting our own pilings in, and to still have the $30,000 for the fish cleaning station, and save ourselves $30,000 out of the other pocket. So it's a $60,000 savings for us to put in our own wood pilings.
Well, it sounds like if you can put your own wood pilings in, we don't even need to spend any money on that. We put it all towards the fish
Right.
station.
You know, instead of 77
So,
or 47.
Well, I guess, I'm not even sure why we're talking about this again, because before we applied for the grant, we had lots of discussion, wood versus steel, and I thought the council, we made a decision, we would move forward with the steel. And now we're back to talking about it again and making decisions again. Here's my concern with cost, and I'm not just looking at the upfront cost, I'm looking at the cost over 10, 15, 20 years. And the cost is definitely going to be greater in maintenance on the wood pilings versus the steel. I mean, that's a fact. It's gonna be more maintenance. We can't get the maintenance done we have today. I mean, we just can't get it done. We don't have enough employees. And if we can put the money in the ground, put it in the ground today and save maintenance and time over 10, 15 years, the long run, it's gonna cost us more with the wood, in my opinion. And we do this all the time. We say, we disagree with the quotes that are given to us, and we say, oh, we can get it done for this, oh, we can buy this. And we find out we're wrong every time.
Not every time.
And we're back to just second guessing and pulling numbers out of the air, and we waste time doing it. We have a grant. We've already said steel seemed to be the best solution. We applied for the grant, now we're back to talking about it again. And I heard you say that once the barnacles form on the wood pilings, that does just as much damage to a boat as the steel. So I don't know.
I don't ever remember talking about this issue ever, wood versus steel. I just have to go to, I know my area of expertise. Boating is not one of them. So I automatically go to the people who do it every day, go in and out of that channel every day. And I think of the many people that I've talked to, one boater, said, yeah, go with steel. But the rest of them all said timber, partly because of the cost, yes, but mostly because our channel is small, it is not very deep, and I don't think we need to say that it's because we have inexperienced boaters. It's that gulf breezes up without hesitation. And because it's not very deep, you have those waves and it can change at any moment, and you have somebody coming in. The guy who does US Towboat, I think, he called me and said, you cannot imagine the damage that a steel piling does. It doesn't have anything to do with the fact that he's an inexperienced or an experienced boater. He pulls boats in when they're out of commission. He says it's just very dangerous. Got an email, I don't know, I saw Tom Adams sent it to everybody, but it was late in the afternoon. He's basically volunteering his time, as well as I know everybody in this community will do anything that they possibly can to help us out. They always have. But he put it in an email saying that if we need help jetting down pilings, wooden pilings, you've got the boat captains to go to. They will help out. So I think we have to go to the experts. It's not me, but the boaters are saying timber.
These were recommended by the Coast Guard?
The steel?
These are the ones that are recommended by the Coast Guard?
Yes, the details that we have and the materials that we have are the Coast Guard recommended.
Now, you said last week that they would not recommend steel or timber. You said last week at our last meeting that they don't recommend a material.
Coast Guard?
Mm-hmm.
If I said that, I'm sorry. It's my understanding that the steel piles and the details that we have currently are Coast Guard recommended.
Is that because we want to go through the resilience and get more of the grant? If the resilience word wasn't in the grant, then would it really matter? I
Fair question.
I understand what the captains are saying. I would imagine that the timber is a lot easier on the boats. If we go with the timbers, my concern is, and Pebble Ridge had said that they were only put in about 4.5 feet. Well, if we go with the timbers, we have to get them in there a whole lot deeper than that to give it a chance to see if that was the problem or not.
If they're 4 to 8 feet deep, yeah, they're clearly going to give more depending on how hard you hit them. But if they're in there deeper and they're solid, they're going to be a formidable object for a boat to hit as well. If you guys want us to pursue timber, we will pursue it. Just let us know.
I prefer that. I mean, the cost savings is gigantic. We could replace the timber 7 times for the cost of the steel. And the timbers are gonna last. We've got good timbers down there still. On the boat slips that are there currently, most of the timbers are still good on the pilings.
The channel markers see a different wave action force than what you see inside the canal.
I understand that, but it's
Okay.
not that significant when you're only about 100 yards apart.
How often, Philip, how often do you have the channel markers been replaced or?
Since I've been here, I know of,
Every 2 years, every 3 years, every year?
I was on road department for 5 years, so I can't say, but I know we replaced 7 that I can remember.
How far is that back?
2007.
And do we have any storms now?
No, we haven't had many. No, actually, we haven't had any storms. Maybe a couple tropical storms, but that's it. We're not as protected in that area either. Say St. Joe Beach or St. Joe. That was the other reason for me to go with steel channel markers. It's open. We don't have the protection of the cave if the storm comes in from the west or something like that. It's a lot more volatile area than, say, you move down that way a few miles. You're just plainly looking at things that we can spend our money on our infrastructure that's not going to cost us in the long run, which we've cut corners so many times and we seem to always pay for it. So that was my push for it, to try to save us some work down the road, some money down the road.
If you would, keep in mind that this is a grant opportunity for $30,000. The match can be part of another grant. So the bottom line is not costing the taxpayers anything, except that you're a taxpayer to the state and the federal government, and you get it trickle down that way, of course. But if the grant funds install wooden channel markers, in 2 or 3 years, 1 or 2 pops out, we're not going to get a grant to replace it. It's going to be out of current operating funds at that time, out of the taxpayer's pocket. So we're looking at it from the standpoint that you put them in now and you're done for many, many years. And to me, that makes sense. But of course, we will do whatever the board tells us to do.
It's unusual to have a comment while we got somebody at the podium, but go ahead, Cap Chuck. It's the
My
same-
main
same
concern
topic,
about the
right?
pollens of the mouth of the canal, we've had wood pollens there for over 50 years, but my main concern is the danger to the boaters. We have the topography of our canal, the location, and the natural order of the Gulf makes it extremely dangerous to boaters going and coming because of wave action. And a steel pollen is the most dangerous thing you can put there as far as our normal boating traffic out in and out of Mexico Beach. Thank you.
Come on, please. Captain Chip.
My name is Chip, I'm not sorry about there, and I got pretty incensed about the steel polish. I met with some of your people in your office. I don't know how many of you dive or are familiar with a wreck called the Black Bark that lies off Panama City Beach. You ever heard of it? Steel oil field supply vessels, 38 feet wide, 185 feet long. I don't know what the gross tonnage on that thing. I'll talk about resilience. That thing during Hurricane Opal moved over 100 yards to the northwest. It's in 80-something feet of water. Now, this is a far more higher energy environment on this beach than it is out there off Panama City Beach in 80-something feet of water. If the Gulf can move that thing, it's going to move this man's steel piling. Your wood pilings are cheap. I can't tell you how many boats I've seen bounce off of them. Just like Chuck says, what happens is, now I'm a single screw boat. I have less maneuverability than he does. He's got twin engines. I have a full keel on my vessel. If I get caught in a sea just right, and we've got a wind coming out of the northwest or west, it'll turn me sideways. I'll come through that canal sideways. The last thing I want to worry about with my passengers on that boat is a steel piling. That wood piling, if I hit it, I'll crack some fiberglass. If I hit a steel piling, it could be severe. And I don't want to see anybody get hurt. The good professor that was talking about resilience doesn't understand the marine environment. I'm gonna tell you that. I don't care if he does what for sea grant. Nothing out there is permanent. You're not gonna find a solution long term. Your wood piles that are out there, I can tell you where if they're in bad shape, they're not gonna be in bad shape from the barnacles. They're always in the bad shape where the wood meets the sand, and there's a reason for that. That's where woodworms get into it. If those pilings were sleeved with something that the woodworm can't eat, like PVC pipe filled with concrete, it'll be there a very, very long time. Some of the pilings Philip's talking about losing broke off, and they broke off because of woodworms. You need to understand that when you design something, you need to talk to people that use it every single day. And that seems to be where the disconnect is. Captain Chuck's been out that past more than I have, but I can pretty much guarantee nobody in this room has been out any less than I have. You've been out more, but I'm gonna tell you right now, if you put those out there, you're gonna have a problem on your hands when somebody hits one, because it's not gonna be pretty. And as far as the lights working, we've had lights over the years. We've had lights with arrays of pelican and seagull deflectors, but we had dolphin piles at one time. The city spent money, I guess there was their money, I don't know whose money it was, it didn't really matter. They put fancy solar lights and batteries up on top of those pilings. It didn't take but about a month, none of them worked. Now there's not a good light solution. The Coast Guard has lights. They also have a ship called a buoy tender. I'm sure you've seen it out there around the buoys sometimes. They don't pick the batteries up to go in those lights and carry them up to the top of that buoy or up to the top of these range poles over here. They have a crane that does that. I don't think Phillips guys are going to be trudging up one of those pilings with a deep cycle car battery in their hand very many times before they decide this ain't quite what we thought it was. Now, if you put something out there and somebody hits it, and I don't care what the Coast Guard's telling you, this man understands the law. If it's supposed to be lighted and it's not lighted, you got a problem. If they're, and I don't know what the good long-term answer on the lighting is. You're gonna have a heck of a time keeping lights working. It's my understanding from the meeting I had with the people from the engineering firm was that that markers are not required, that piles are not required. But if they are required, they have to have at least 4. Was I told incorrectly by the engineering firm?
No, we could absolutely do away with channel markers.
Okay. Is there, I don't know if you're required to have a lighted buoy, or can you have a buoy?
We have to put channel markers back in. We have to put whether it be steel or wood, we have to go with one or the other. What we had before is what we've been approved through the Coast Guard. We have to stick with that. And we have to use 4 of our already approved GPS coordinates.
Well, maybe I just misunderstood what you just said. You have to put the markers back, although the Coast Guard doesn't require them.
If you're gonna have channel markers, they have to be back where the Coast Guard already approved them to be. If you don't want to have channel markers, you can do away with all of them, but you have to do away with all of them.
Right, but I'm asking about a separate thing. A buoy is not a channel mark per se.
We can't go with a buoy. We
Because-
have to go with what's approved by the Coast Guard already. That's been done back in 90, I want to say 7 is what's sticking in my head for some reason.
I mean, the Coast Guard has in their coastal waterway unlighted buoys, they're foam, you know.
But this is what the city said that we would have. The city said we would put these channel markers in lighted with day boards. That's what the United States Coast Guard says we have to maintain.
I'm not sure I follow that, but okay. My point is this, you're gonna have issues. I wouldn't create a problem, and I wouldn't spend $77,000 for something that's not going, I mean, I don't care if it is steel, that don't mean it's gonna be there. We haven't had a hurricane in a long time, those poles are cheap. Those wood, I priced some myself for something else I was working on, 30-foot, 10-inch diameter, 2.5 marine piles. 30 feet long, Portland Lumber Company, $185 a piece. Now, we have people in there that are working on docks all the time. If the city has to hire somebody specifically to come over and replace a pile, you might want to consider catching one of these crews when they're over here and have a few of those piles sitting down there in the yard, and you can probably get them to set one for you for $100. I mean, Gaddy's over here, a lot of people over here working on different people's docks, so if you see one getting bad, pick up one, tell them, say, hey, here's $100. I just pay the cash and get it replaced right then, and you won't have to worry about it. $77,000 divided by 185 is a lot of wood poles. That's a lot.
Does every channel, the mouth of a channel, have channel markers, or do some of them have buoys?
The channel marker.
They all have to have channel markers.
No, the intercoastal waterway over here at the ship canal has got floating buoys. And they're channel markers. So it's whatever you've asked for and they've said, okay.
We can get real technical about all this, but technically, those are in the bay. They're not the mouth of the ocean. But
So if we went with the wood, can we require, as Chip mentioned, the PVC pilings around it to help protect where the sand and the water meet the pilings? If that's a concern, that certainly can't be thousands of dollars to help alleviate that possible problem.
I mean, that just adds to the cost and to the work. Do we have other, I mean, to me, we should be looking, and I know we have a lot of people who may be experts, but we've sought out the experts of the Coast Guard to get our information from, but is there another city who has the steel channel markers that we, as elected officials, could contact and just see how they're working for them?
Off the top of my head, Mexico Beach Canal mouth entrance is different than other places. Panama City, Destin, going on over to Navarre, Pensacola, any other places where you'd have a pass, it's much different. To the east, St. Mark's has a river coming out of there. I'd have to look into that.
Because what I'm hearing is there's a concern with the steel versus the wood.
Right.
So can we find another city who's using the steel, the Coast Guard approved steel, and find out what,
Sure.
What their experience has been with the steel? And if their experience has been that they're dangerous and they regret it, then that kind of answers our question. But
Agreed.
if they haven't seen any, yeah.
And in the meantime, can we talk to this Dr. Simba, did you say? Simon, and inform him that we are really concerned.
From a
that
boater
we-
safety perspective?
Right, because of the size of our mouth of the
Is
canal.
that how we want to phrase it?
Yes, clarify that.
I was gonna say, she doesn't even know me yet, really.
I couldn't have wrote that. That's great. Okay, we've got a lot of valuable input here from a lot of people. Let's do a little bit more research before we do anything, okay?
Can do.
All right. Now that you've been properly grilled, Would you like to proceed?
I think that's just a warm-up, isn't it?
Yeah.
Next up is electrical work at the canal. I think at the workshop the other night, we talked about kind of a gap between what was expected Duke Energy to take care of and what the contractor is hired to take care of, and needing to go back and get 4 of these current transformers, or CTs, installed there. I was able to get up with Dwayne today, and I spoke with Bill at Harder's. Dwayne's with Duke Energy. And there's currently a $15,000 kind of budget in Harder's contract to cover the cost of electrical install. And there's 2 options that we explored. One is overhead, how everything is already out there, and the second one is underground, which would help with the community's resiliency rating, the CSR, or CRS, excuse me. The cost for Duke's work, if we went overhead with everything, is only around $2,000, and that's for the relocation of the light poles that were there before to go to the new locations. And then Harder's, for these 4 CTs that we would need, their cost for that was around $15,500. But we would have the $13,000 balance of that $15,000 budget we had for electrical work. So the cost impact on that particular task or item would be $2,500. If we were going to run everything underground, Duke would provide the CTs, and Harder's would have to provide conduit and do some borings under the road. And when we're talking about above ground and below ground, we're talking about landward of Canal Parkway, not in between the parkway and the canal itself. Currently, everything's on, all the power's on poles. It's talking about running it underground. For Duke to go back and provide the underground work, and then the underground feeds to the light poles, it's $30,000 for the underground main power lines, $6,100 for them to wire the poles coming up through the poles, and then Harder's cost for that is $12,600 to do the underground work to support Duke in this effort. So that totals up to $48,700, but then again, we have that $13,000 balance from the original contract versus the relocation of the poles, so that overall cost would be $35,700.
Extra.
Correct.
Okay, so let me just ask you a quick question. I know that, I looked at the contract.
Okay.
And that was one of the questions. It was great information and very interesting for me to see this contract. It's
There's a lot in there.
amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But one of the pre-bid, one of the questions that came up in the pre-bid meeting was specifically, what is Duke Energy going to provide?
Yeah.
So that should have been answered in the bid from Harder's. It says Duke Energy allowance, electrical transformers / pads, meters, light posts. That sounds to me like they knew what they were doing when they bid the $15,000.
I think the $15,000 was a figure that we received from Duke as kind of a budget to put it in there, that their work will cost less than $15,000. I think if you went back and looked at all the other bids, they would have the same line item with similar text that went along with it, if that makes sense.
So where is the discrepancy coming from? $35,000.
Well, remember that's a separate option than what was bid. What was bid and planned all along is the overhead lines. So the change, basically what's out there now, all overhead service. The change to the current plan would be a $2,500 impact. The $35,000 is in case the city wanted to pursue this improved community rating service score, which in turn helps lower insurance rates throughout the community. And I'm not saying that by sending this one stretch of power underground that the entire city is going to get a break on insurance from that, but it's a step towards that direction.
So the difference is overhead is we're in within budget. If we want to go underground, it's the 35 difference. You gotta
Correct.
keep it simple for me here, sorry.
Luckily, I've got to keep it simple for Mayor, I get lost as well, but the overhead is $2,500 extra. And to get, going back to your question about where the discrepancy was, I think it was miscommunication and probably on our part, that we asked Duke, all right, what are you going to provide? Duke says, all right, we're going to do all the electrical work. And all right, so what number do you need? 15,000, okay. And so instead of looking into that more, we just accepted that 15,000 would get it done when it would appear that it's 17.5 that gets it done, not the 15,000. But that was way back in the bid phase.
So let me, I'm with Mary, I'm getting a little confused. You're saying that if we, regardless of how we bid it properly, not properly, whatever, if we go with underground versus overhead,
Yes.
we're talking about a change, $2,500 is the difference?
Well, no. The original plan and how it is today and how it is all through the city is overhead power lines. You know, you got the power poles, you got
Right.
lines strung between them. If we continue with that method, which is out there today, which has been out there forever, then the cost impact is $2,500. All right, and does everybody get that?
Yeah, I understand now.
Okay,
And then if
okay.
we go to the underground, that's the 35,000.
If we want to pursue that as something that the city wants to do to try to improve that score, if that's something that's a goal of the city, then the cost for that would be $35,000 and change.
Besides improving the score, what else does that do for the city, running it underground versus overhead?
The aesthetic value of the look down there. In other words, anything overhead in a major storm is going to be blown over and be worthless. If it's underground, it's not going to be hurt much. So it's a consideration for future expenses as well. And it just looks better.
I'm gonna have to listen to that again because I swear I asked that question, you said no. So I'm completely confused. It sounded to me like you contradicted yourself. But, so I'm gonna repeat it one more time.
Okay.
So if we keep our overhead electric, it's just an additional 2,500 over and above the 15,000 that was bid.
Correct.
If we choose to do everything underground, it is an additional $35,000 to put everything underground. Because I know at the last meeting, it was the transformers that was the difference. That's still the case?
It is in different ways. But yes, it's, when we're talking about the transformers, the current transformers, if the power's coming in overhead, then Harder's is going to install these current transformers. Their price for doing that is $15,500.
Okay.
But we would have the $13,000 left over from the $15,000 budget to offset that $15,500, leaving the $2,500 balance.
That's overhead.
That's overhead. That's how it is today. That's how it's always been, overhead,
And it's been that way for,
since they've run power down there.
I'm not sure that aesthetics nor ratings are worth $35,000.
yeah.
We're going to hit the end of this budget on the canal, and we're not going to be finished. I understand we need to do it now, ahead of time.
Right.
But I'm not willing to, I don't think $35,000 ad is a good ad. Not this early.
How much money do we have to play with
No.
to make these
The
changes?
total amount of the grant funds that we have versus the city's money that we're putting into it.
The total amount of the grant is $2.5 million. And as of the last change order 2, the contract value is at $2.47 million.
So we're nearly there.
Well, that's no city funds, though.
Correct.
Yeah, that doesn't include.
We've got 900,000.
What's that? I'm
We
sorry.
have just over 900,000.
The city has 900,000 in? Okay.
That's why I say it's getting close.
Is that, when do we have to make that decision?
Tonight, right?
Well, I mean, it sounds like the decision's made. It doesn't sound like there's a lot of backing for the underground. So it almost, it's the question of, does the council recognize and agree with the $2,500 cost, additional cost for the overhead power? That's what it sounds like where we're at. And the underground research and pursuit was just a question asked of us. It's not something that we came up with and we're trying to force down your throats, regardless of mouth size or whatever, but it's, it was just an option that somebody asked about, so that's why we're bringing the numbers to you.
Is there anyone at the table in favor of the underground option at $35,000?
Well, I like the underground option, but I have a hard time spending the $35,000, but that certainly would be my first choice.
Yeah, I agree with Linda. Again, if we're thinking today, we would go with the cheaper version. If we're thinking long-term and thinking more strategically, we're gonna go with something that's we're not gonna have to worry about the first storm that takes them out. Well, we've just spent the difference. So I don't know, I think I'm with Linda. 35,000 kind of concerns me. That's a big number for the difference. But I just think long-term, it's again, a better option.
Philip, how many times has our power service been wiped out down there by storms?
Couldn't tell you.
Ever? That you know of?
I would imagine at least once, yeah.
I mean, local?
Probably. That was my guess.
But you don't even know for sure?
No.
So it's not like it's gonna happen all the time.
Well, you just need one storm.
That's right.
That could happen Sunday.
And that's why we have insurance.
Mayor, you on the way in?
You know, this is silly, but I'm coming from my real estate aspect, which is underground utilities. Whew, that would mean increases value. On the canal, I'm not so sure. I actually have to think about that a little bit, and I hate that Chip left, and I don't know if we have any other captains in the... He's right out there. In the audience. I don't know if there's another, is it only aesthetic, or is it really, a concern with storms? I don't know. I'm iffy on that one. I wish we'd be all underground everywhere, but I'm iffy. I actually don't think we need to pay the extra $2,500. I don't understand why we're being, that should have been in the bid. The bid is the bid, and I don't understand why even going with underground, that's what was bid, was the $15,000 to do, not the underground, to do the overhead.
I agree with you.
But, so I don't know.
One comment, you have something?
Just a quick thing. It's not my field or anything, but I lived in Virginia right on the coast, and we actually had overground service put in. It was around 22 grand. We had Hurricane Isabel, I believe it was, came in, wiped it out. It was almost $100,000 to go back underground because they would not allow us to go. They said it should have been underground the first time. The underground really does help. I know that sounds like a lot of money, but it takes a lot of money to dig it and actually put it underground. But the longevity of the system lasting, no storm is going to affect it. If a storm hits it, it's affected a whole lot more than just that little bit of electrical. So, like I said, it's not my field. We just went through it in Virginia when Isabel hit, and it devastated us. And had we done that, we would have never been without power for 17 days, nor would we have had to pay that massive amount that we had to have it fixed. So it really is a much better option to go underground than it is to go overground. So, sorry, not my field, but.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
My name's Betty Hartle, and I know nothing about it other than it would appear to me if we're going to put something underground, it would be where the electricity was needed most after a hurricane, not down the canal, which electricity down in that area would not be important as it would be going to the police department or to residential areas. So if we're gonna spend money to go underground, I would think it would be more feasible to put it where electricity is needed in case of a hurricane or after a hurricane. Thank you.
That's a good point, actually.
We actually have a code that all new dwellings have to have underground.
What'd you say?
We have a building code that requires that,
What our building
Underground.
code requires
underground service.
all electric to be underground?
I'm not exactly positive, but I think so.
Just,
I put mine in, they required me to put it underground.
just from the street, just from the
From the
pole
street.
to
I mean,
the
not the,
structure.
we don't make the power company, but we make the
Right,
residents.
right, well, yeah, that's what we're talking about here, though, right?
Yeah. Well, he needs to know, because they're fixing to start field work next week.
You need
Not
to
putting-
know this today.
Yeah, we do. Actually, I see a consensus to go underground here at the table. That's what I see.
So you want to make a motion and then we vote one way or the other?
Make a motion, let's, in a second, let's vote.
I'm sorry, I don't feel comfortable voting at all. I don't know. I'm sorry, I have to do my research. I have to talk to people, and I'm not ready.
I know, but we can't table this if they got to put in
Okay,
pipes
let's
soon.
vote.
Adrian, when's the next workshop?
26.
You don't have another voting meeting though for a month.
Next workshop,
Unless
the
we vote.
26th, regular meeting is May 10th.
Unless we just had a special meeting before the workshop to vote on
How
this.
much time do you need?
We can vote, I'm going to vote no, because I don't feel comfortable in voting yes.
Mayor?
What information?
What do you need?
Betty's point is very valid, very valid. And we're talking about electricity to the boats. Most of those boats are going to be out of there if a storm hits. So that is a very valid point. So,
Actually, they need electricity to pump the water out of those boats.
yeah, but most of them are going
Different
to
point of
be
view.
out of there.
A couple of different points.
And then on the other hand, if we start one place, we can continue to improve another place if we have the option.
One of the things you mentioned, again, that the $15,000 bid to do X, Y, and Z electrical work, again, that was a number that was put together from Duke. That wasn't Harders who looked at the project and said, we need $15,000 to do it. So it's a little bit different of a situation there, getting back to your question of why we're even paying for this if Harders proposed to do it for X amount. That was a number that was provided to them. So that I wouldn't say that's fair to hold their feet to the fire on that one. If that makes sense? Okay.
It makes sense. I don't know if I agree with it, but it makes sense.
Secondly, this underground stuff, I think I mentioned it earlier, it was if it's a community objective, if you want to eventually get all your power underground as opposed to overhead, then yeah, you're starting on the end of the service, but it's a step in the direction you want to go. I mean, because if at the end of the day a big storm hits and the end of the run is underground and it's safe, that doesn't really matter if everything's serving, it's down. So it's something else to consider when you're thinking about the total picture here. But if the city ultimately wants to move in that direction where you have it underground, now's a good time to do this certain run of it, if you have the funds for it. And I was going to say, I can step outside and call Bill if y'all want to move forward with the meeting and see if he needs this answer right now or if he can wait a little while.
I would appreciate that.
Yeah, all right. Well, let me step out, make a call, and I'll get right back, okay?
That'd be great, thank you.
That would certainly help. Okay, we've sufficiently beat them. Ordinances, the second reading of ordinance.
Excuse me, Tom, I'm sorry. We were going to talk about canal access.
So should we wait until he pops back in since he should have answers?
Yeah, we can wait until he comes back in.
Yeah, we
if
just
you
need to
want.
make sure we get back to it
Okay.
when he
Yeah.
comes back.
All right. Yeah, that's right. It's second reading of ordinance 635. This is the appropriations ordinance on the many changes that we made to the budget. Motion to adopt ordinance 635.
Do we want to read it?
We can read it by title only, but that's what we're talking about.
I move to read ordinance 635 by title.
Second.
A motion and a second to read by title.
Ordinance 635 is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Mexico Beach, Florida, amending the appropriation of funds in the budget for the fiscal year 2015-2016 for the purpose of providing funds for the general fund and providing an effective date.
Okay, do we have a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Ms. Blackburn?
Yes.
Ms. Albright?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Ms. Castro?
Yes.
Mr. Tindler?
Yes.
And the next item on the agenda is the first reading of ordinance 634. Motion to read by title only.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Please read ordinance 634 by title only.
Ordinance 634 is an ordinance establishing a civic center rental fee, establishing current rates to be charged for the use of the Civic Center Mexico Beach, repealing ordinances and/or parts of ordinances in conflict with this ordinance, and providing an effective date.
And ladies and gentlemen, this is just a first reading, but if you haven't been going to workshops, what this is about, this ordinance says that we would only charge a fee to use this facility of private parties that are not open to the general public. And other groups that have been using the Civic Center can continue to do so, only paying a damage deposit.
I just want to quickly say thank you to the folks who came to the meetings and asked us to rethink that. I appreciate your input on the ordinance, because your input did change my mind on the events open to the public. So I think other minds as well. So thank you for taking the time.
Right, and I think it's fair that I'm gonna use, for example, the Bridge Club. If they put $100 on deposit with the city, they can use the thing forever, so long as they don't mess it up and we have to take money out of their deposit to fix something or clean it. So it's not, they won't be paying a rental fee, they'll just have this one deposit on account as long as they use it. And I guess when they quit using it, they get their deposit back. So we're not gonna have to rent it to people like the Bridge Club or the AA or anybody like that. It's just the people that are having weddings and receptions and things like that in here, that are private events, they will pay a fee to rent the building. Because it'll be a large, uncontrolled, not open to the public event.
Okay. Jeff, if you'll forbear us, we'll go one more before we bring you back up, please. Ordinance 636. Motion to read ordinance 636 by title only.
Your Honor, if I could save you some time on that, please. I had an email from our city attorney asking questions about the area of this ordinance where it has the repetitive flood damage over a 10-year period and X number of years by which you count those improvements to come up with an accumulation of the worth of your improvements. Once it gets 50%, you got to replace it. I've not had the chance, seeing as I got this yesterday and I wasn't even here, to check with the floodplain people or the flood ordinance people from the state. So I would respectfully request this be taken off till we get that solidified. I would like to request that if we could then, once I get this double checked by the state, we could call a special meeting in 2 weeks when we have our workshop and then do the first reading at that time.
Is time of the essence here to get this, we have to do it by a certain
We
deadline?
might have to check our dates and see if we can even get that done, so we'll have to regroup.
Well, let me ask you a question. In the past, when we've had a first reading, we've gone ahead with the first reading and then we've amended it before the second reading if we need to, and it sounds like we may have to amend what you have.
May have to amend a couple of sentences here and there.
So I think we can go ahead with the first reading.
I think so too.
Just
And
if you're okay,
That's
that's
what Nick
okay.
has said in the past. is
Just
you can
last
go
meeting, he
ahead.
said no, that's why we just did a first reading of the Civic Center ordinance again. We amended that one after we first read it. He said we'd have to first read it again. That's why we're here. That's why we just did a first reading of the Civic Center again when we did a first reading last month.
Yeah, I just remember him saying that we could amend it, you could tweak it after the first reading.
I think I remember the same thing. You can tweak after the first reading. We're not talking about the details of
But he knew we were having the first reading today,
Right.
and he said, no, don't have the first reading?
He did not say that.
Oh. He just said there are things that he needs to check on this.
Right, and the flood ordinance people have not had a chance to look at the language either.
And it seemed,
And they're the people that are the experts. But if it's just a few sentences here and there, it's really not a major change in anything. So if you're comfortable, then.
Yeah, because it wasn't going to be much difference than it was before.
Right.
I'm, on this one, I'm comfortable with the first reading tonight, and then
I am too.
Do any changes?
Okay.
Seems to be the pattern.
Read by title, please.
So moved.
Read by title.
Don't have a motion to read it yet.
So moved.
second.
We do.
Ordinance number 636. An ordinance by the City Council amending the City of Mexico Beach Code of Ordinances to repeal Chapter 152, to adopt a new Chapter 152, to adopt hazard maps, to designate a floodplain administrator, to adopt procedures and criteria for development in flood hazard areas, and for other purposes providing for applicability, repealer, severability, and an effective date.
Okay. Jeff, please come back up.
I got a hold of Bill. He said that if he can get direction at that May 10th meeting, that they'll make it work. But that's the latest he can go without getting into disrupting his construction schedule on the electrical.
Okay, then I'd prefer not to make a decision tonight. Is that all right with everyone? All right.
Okay. Let's see. All right, the canal itself. I think one of the big items is pedestrian access to the beach. It's currently closed. Last week at the workshop, Councilwoman Albrecht asked me to go and meet with the contractor and discuss plans for the following phase and how they're going to work the maintenance of traffic, both vehicular and pedestrian. And the plan as of right now is to allow vehicular traffic for those that have business down there, meaning or the residents that live there. If there's a boat captain whose boat is moored at the new slips while the work is being done on the existing slips, then he'll be allowed vehicular access to park close to his boat. But to have open public access at that point, that's not the plan by the contractor. And then for pedestrian access, he said kind of the same thing he said now, that he can provide access if that's what the city wants, but he'd prefer not to. And that is a change from what I was saying last week. I was under the impression that pedestrian access was going to be provided, but in talking with them, they clarified they can provide it if the city requests it. But their preference is that it remains closed.
So if it remained closed, we're looking at a full year versus allowing the pedestrians to use it for the remainder of the construction period.
Will the parking lot at the Salt Creek corner be closed during, when it's open right now because the construction is south of that? But when they move to the other section, would that be closed?
It will be closed.
Because I was thinking it's a little bit of a compromise that when they're not working, like I've had seen more than one Friday that they have not been working there. So you've got Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and they don't seem to ever work on Saturday and Sunday. So if they buttoned up their job site like they're supposed to do anyway, I'm sure, make sure the tape's up and all that, then on the weekends we could allow pedestrians down to that beach. I don't know where they're gonna park. That would be sort of, it's not dangerous if they don't climb on the equipment, and there's nothing, you can put 10,000 signs out and they're gonna climb on equipment if they're gonna do it. 10,000 signs and they still leave tents on the beach. So,
I can see that perspective, but there are other hazards that are around there. The demolition activities that are taking place, there's nails, there's wood scrap, there's metal scrap that is strewn about the length of the seawall. Right now, they're just demoing stuff by hand. So they're taking a sledgehammer, and there's wood that's splintering, which is not a life safety issue, but I mean, you got rusty nails, you got exposed rusted metal, you got tripping hazards, a lot of stuff that 30 years ago we didn't concern ourselves with, but today, somebody trips and falls, goes headfirst into that, the sheet pile, the new sheet pile, or any of the exposed metal rebar, you got yourself a liability issue.
I hate to see the public not have access for a full year. I wish for somehow we could create a path behind CDC right to the beach so that they wouldn't have to walk around that area, but we would still give them access to the beach.
So here's the concern I have about how all this has been handled, and you and I have talked quite a bit about this. When I look at the construction drawings, it says that, first of all, the contractor is responsible for securing their job site, not the city, the contractor. Their job site can't be wherever they want it to be. It's the job site, it's the construction site. And I understand there's active loading and unloading of materials, I understand that. I'm comfortable with closing it to vehicular traffic. And honestly, I think it should be closed just past the Welcome Center to vehicular traffic because we're getting ready to start that next phase. I've talked to the chief about it. I know it's very difficult for them to know who should be down there and who shouldn't. So closing it to vehicular traffic, I do agree that's a safety issue, and we need to do that. But when it comes to a pedestrian path that's going to be all the way on the other side of the street, when I look at the plans, it says that the contractor is responsible for maintenance of traffic, flagging, a flagger, whatever they need to do, and it has to meet FDOT Index 600 series, which is outlined in the plan.
Right.
If you need to close the road or the lane, it doesn't indicate in here that we're going to have to close Canal Parkway for a year. Nowhere does it tell us we're going to do that. The council was never told that needed to happen. But it says that even if you do close a lane or a road, you have to notify the adjacent property owners in writing at least 7 days in advance of the closure. They have 24 hours to respond, to give their concerns with it. I mean, there's a lot of things in this plan that we didn't do. And I think the reason the contractor didn't do it is because they didn't close the road, we did. We made the decision to close the road. We determined it was a safety issue. I think when you have a beach, and this, it's a beach that's used by a lot of our residents here. They walk there. And I think that we can safely provide pedestrian access to that public beach without it being a safety issue, without them being in the construction site. Honestly, I think that we gave the contractor an out when we closed the road. We just said, just take all the space you need and use all that you need, and don't mind our citizens. You just take all the time, all the place you need. I mean, it's clearly outlined in the plans. And we've just allowed them to make that whole area a construction zone, and it's not. Closing it to vehicular traffic, I support. I think we should close it sooner, not have people go down there and try to get turned around. I've seen how that's and you just don't know who should be down there and who shouldn't. But pedestrian, we can do it. I was in Atlanta over the weekend, and you can go to the Georgia DOT traffic cams and see this. They're installing those big, heavy concrete sound barrier walls along Interstate 285 right there before I-20. They're right on the side of the road. That crane is moving that stuff all around. They're flagging it when necessary. One day I went by there and they had a flagger out there and a lane closed. But it's right there, and I just don't understand why it's a safety issue all the way to the other side of Canal Parkway to allow people pedestrian access. I heard what you said, that people could be down there, there's nails. Well, they could be down there today. There's nothing stopping them from being there. Whether or not we allow pedestrian access is not going to change the fact if somebody is going to go down there, they're going to go down there. I just think the restrictions are severe. And I don't think that they're necessary, and I think that we need to come up with a plan that would allow access. If we just do it on the weekends. When I talked to the contractor, he said they will never work on Sundays, and it will be extremely rare that they ever work on a Saturday. They don't plan on it. It would be rare that they did. So I'm just concerned about how heavy-handed we've been.
If they had a sign that when they close their site down, say they're gonna be closed Friday, Saturday, Sunday, when they close the site down, they set the, they can have their tape and their cones, and they have set the sign up at the front that says pedestrian traffic only. And then they're channeled down by the yellow tape to the beach. And there is no activity. I mean, there's no construction activity, they're not gonna be there. When they come back, they take the pedestrian sign and leave the one that says closed. While there's activity Monday through Thursday, Monday through Friday.
They said they'd provide the access if y'all voted on it, so.
Well, I think at their expense, not ours, at their expense, they need to provide the flags or the flagmen or whatever they want to do. If the barrels are not working, then they, at their expense, needs to provide something sturdier to keep the pedestrians away from an area. I do think, and I've changed my mind on this, I do think the pedestrians should be allowed down to the beach beginning now. We all of a sudden stopped it without any notice. I feel that was wrong on our part. And we have to swallow our pride and say, okay, we're listening to you. And this is the way it should be for